Hi there, folks. We're here for another episode of everyone's favorite, or not favorite, YouTube show, HC Chats With. And today I'm joined by a local author, Paul Regnier. At least he's local now, or it was a year ago when we talked first. Um, Paul, introduce yourself. Tell the people who you are.
Hello, I am Paul Regnier. I am an author of speculative fiction, which is a kind of a large umbrella for fantasy, science fiction, supernatural, mystery, a lot of different things. But yeah, that's what I love to write. My particular style is sort of lighthearted, humorous adventures. Lately, I've been doing humorous fantasy, my last few books. So that's kind of where I'm at these days, and just really enjoying doing it.
All right. Um, so, how did you get into writing? And particularly, how did you get into writing humorous material? Was that just who you are, or did you like make a decision at some point?
You know, I always loved, like when I was a kid, I loved reading, and my I would always go to stuff like science fiction and fantasy, especially when I was a teenager. Fantasy, like when I was in junior high, my English teacher gave us The Hobbit to read, and I didn't know anything about it. I'd never even heard of it, and I just remember from like the first chapter being so immersed in that world of Middle Earth, like no other
Hmm.
book, and I couldn't believe it. I didn't know books were capable of such immersion, and it just kind of blew my mind as like this preteen, and
Hmm.
that sort of began my journey ever since. And so I always have that fondness for fantasy, um and so I read Narnia, all the Lord of the Rings, including The Hobbit, and then I got into the Terry Brooks trilogy, the Shannara trilogy.
Hmm.
And then when I was a
Back when
teenager,
it was a trilogy,
yeah, yeah, what is it now? 50 books.
something like that.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but back then it was just a trilogy. And then when I was a teenager, I stumbled across this book called Another Fine Myth, and it was written by this author named Robert Asprin.
Hmm.
And it was a fantasy book, but it was funny. It was humorous and lighthearted, and I'd never come across anything like that before. And it kind of really opened my eyes to what you could do if you added a little bit of humor. Because I always liked, funny shows and stuff like that. But I always kind of thought they were two different things. Like, oh, fantasy is real serious and an epic quest and things like that. So here was this author introducing humor into it. And I mentioned Terry Brooks earlier. He ended up doing this series, like I think they call it the Landover series, which was a
Right.
trilogy, and that was humorous too. And I thought, like, oh wow, here's this
Hmm.
whole like subgenre I didn't know about, and I really like it. So, I mean, I was a teenager, so at that point, I didn't, stand up and say like, one day I shall be an author of. I just really enjoyed it, and I think that's where most authors start out, as just enjoying reading so much and enjoying stories. And it gets to the point where it's like, wow, I'd like to tell my own stories. I've got some ideas after reading all these books. So yeah.
Sure. Okay. Um, yeah. No. I for some reason got stuck with Sword of Shannara the first few times
Mm,
that I tried, but Magic Kingdom for Sale, that took
yeah.
me like a page and a half to get hooked.
Yeah. That was a fun trilogy.
Yeah, I did have a friend who insisted I keep going with Sword of Shannara, and the chapter after I always stopped got me hooked.
Mm.
Um, so, and then, yeah. Um, okay, so so that's in your blood, and then you start writing at what point in time in your life? And that just became the natural thing that you wrote?
You
Or you're like,
know, when
I
I
want to
when I
get
was a
back to
kid, it was more of like short stories and like little comic strips and stuff
it?
like
Hmm.
that. Just I almost did it just as like a hobby, like skateboarding, or just stuff I did for fun.
Sure.
It wasn't until like high school I had an English teacher where it was like a creative writing, and she kind of encouraged me. She's like, "Hey, these are what you're turning in is pretty interesting. You ever thought of pursuing it?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. Can you make money doing it?" Which I found out, no, you can't really. No, you,
Exactly. Yeah.
you can a little. You can a little bit, but and then in college, I went to college and I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I took all these general ed classes, and I finally landed on a TV and film path because everything else looked extremely boring to me. And the only thing that seemed interesting is like, well, hey, I like movies, I like TV shows. Maybe I could do something there. And I just thought like maybe I could do screenwriting or something like that. So that's what I did
Mm-hmm.
in college. I did some screenplays and tried to get them out there, but it's just like unless you know people in Hollywood, it's a really difficult path. Um, and then I went to this one writers conference and I talked to the screenwriter, and she'd been optioned and she had her scripts out there, and I told her like, oh, I have this fantasy screenplay, I'm trying to get it, what do you suggest? And she goes, well, she's like, fantasy, that's like tens of millions of dollars of special effects. She goes, maybe think about turning it into a book, because it's one thing for a production company to dump tens of millions of dollars into an unknown author to do a fantasy movie. That's probably not going to happen. But
Right.
if you make it into a book and a publisher likes you, they only have to make a much smaller investment to try to get your stuff out there. So your odds are greatly improved. And I thought, okay, that's good advice. So that's what I did. And I kind of got hooked on that ability to kind of delve a little deeper into your characters through a novel, and been doing it ever since, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. And the special effect budget, pretty small.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. Okay. Alrighty. So before we get into your more recent works, got to talk about your mysteries featuring a dog. We're big on dogs around here. Um,
Sweet.
I do a post every year, uh, inspired by one of my readers, where I list books where the dog lives.
Hmm.
So you know going in that it's a safe book. Uh, I assume your first few, at least, because it's a series, are pretty safe. Uh, I'm hoping to add your books to that list this year. Tell people about Tale of Mystery.
Yeah,
That's
Tale
the
of
first
Mystery is the first one. Currently, I have 5 books in that series. It's a subgenre called cozy mystery, and cozy mystery, for people that aren't familiar with it, is basically it doesn't get, it's a mystery, but it's more of a whodunit. It doesn't get into like grisly forensics or any of the edgy crime kind of novels. It's more of quirky characters, funny banter. It's just like the who done it kind of thing.
Yeah,
So that's what I did. I sometimes compare it to that show Psych. I don't know if you've seen that,
you
but
did.
with a dog. So
Okay.
the one I have is an Australian Shepherd, and I still consider these under that speculative fiction umbrella, because in the first book, the main character develops the ability to telepathically communicate with his dog. And so his dog basically helps him solve crimes by like sniffing things out that a human wouldn't be able to find, or seeing better in the dark, or hearing things from far away. So he kind of uses all his enhanced canine abilities to help the main character in tracking down, who's responsible for this murder, and basically to help solve the crime. And it was a really fun series. Like I said, there's 5 books in it. I may continue to write more because they are a blast to write. And I love dogs. I grew up with dogs, and we have a dog now, and you know
Yeah.
they're just fun. And sometimes I wish I could talk to my dog, and what would that be like?
Sure.
So
Sure.
it's fun to explore in a book.
So in your world, the dog is Sean and the human is Gus.
Well, there are 2 guys like where like
Oh, okay.
they're best friends, and they have that funny quirky banner kind of like Sean and Gus. But then the dog is sort of like this third funny character, but he's coming at it from a canine perspective. And yeah, so it's real fun. And then the main character, his love interest is Brooke. So she's a police officer, and in this kind of
Okay.
like small mountain town. So that's
Mhm.
kind of their connection to the police, and they work together with the police to solve these local small town crimes. And yeah, so it's just a
Okay.
lot of fun.
Cool. All right. So now, um, the first book I read of yours was Bard Tidings.
Yeah.
I don't think I've written a post about it yet. It's on the top of my list, which
Cool.
is a really long list. Anyway, but there's no deadline associated with it. That's the problem, is that it's been out for a while. There's no pending deadline. Anyway, so I enjoyed Bard Tidings.
Oh, thank you.
The characters, the world, the voice. It was really, really good.
Thank you.
I'm going to proceed with it, or a little preamble there with that. So, pitch Bard Tidings. Where did it come from? And what would you like people to know about it, basically?
Sure. So as the title implies, a bard is the main character, and I just always thought, like I'd read so many fantasies where, the hero is this like, this mighty warrior, and the quest has called him, and he must go and forth. And I just thought, hey, how fun would it be to have like the unlikeliest of characters in kind of like that fantasy world, like a bard, to have to be the one that goes on this epic quest, and he's totally out of his league as far as like fighting off creatures
Right.
and so it starts the book starts out with him. He's a bard in a castle, but he has to serve this horrible king who rules with an iron fist, and it's just an awful place. And he thought this great, oh, I get to be a bard in a castle. He thought this was his epic spot to be as a bard, and it turns out like, oh, this is awful. Like I want to get out of here. Life was better as a traveling musician. So he gets in trouble with the king, and the king puts a bounty on his head, and so he's got to like basically flee the castle and survive in the wild lands beyond, which he's not prepared for. And so it's just sort of a fun like misadventures of this unlikeliest of characters that has to sort of rise to be the hero because he has to, or he'll die, basically.
Yeah. I mean, and his partner is not much of a better.
Yes, his best friend is a
Right.
jester who's also very ill prepared, and they go with the jester's sister, who the main character, the bard, is in love with, but hasn't quite gotten the courage to profess his love, which he does along the way, But so those three travel together, and they pick up some unlikely allies along the way. No spoilers, but there's some fun allies that they pick up along the way, and they have a dragon chasing them and all kinds of crazy stuff. So yeah, it was like I said in the beginning, it was kind of that first thing that got introduced to me that I got so excited about, is that intersection of fantasy with humor. And I just have a lot of fun writing those kind of books.
Yeah. And I would say your humor is, I don't know, a bit more accessible, less distasteful to some than aspirins.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. I've flipped through rather a couple of my aspirin novels lately, and I'm like, really? This is what I thought was great. Okay.
Yeah, I know. I did the same thing like a year ago, and I'm like, oh, I don't remember some of this stuff being in there, because sometimes it gets a little crude and stuff like that. And I think that's sort of, I mean, for the main part, he keeps it pretty clean. I think that is one of my goals as a writer too. I want to have humor, but I don't want to have to go down that pathway of like crude or over sexualized, or a lot of those things sometimes you find in humorous fantasy these days. And it seems like it's more and more so, but to me, it's awesome when I get like some feedback or an email or something from like a preteen or a young teenager that finds one of my books and says, I really like it. It was fun. And it's so funny. And it's like, that's great, because I can give them something that doesn't have like, some of the crude stuff. And I'm sure their parents would appreciate that as well. So yeah. And I just think it's wholesome is the way to go, in general. I mean, I don't know. That's the kind of stuff I like to read too. So yeah.
Yeah. So, a lot of times, I'll be talking to someone and they're like, well, what should I give my kid to read? And I said, I'll say, well, this and this and this, but here's some disclaimers on these books. And, yours is one of the handful that I don't have to give a disclaimer on.
Thank you.
That's
like great.
Okay. So, one other thing about Bard Tidings before I am trying to avoid spoilers. The giants
Hmm.
were, yeah, perfect, perfectly executed. Such a great idea.
Oh, thanks.
Um, yeah, no, I had a lot of fun with those. So now, moving along to, and I want to start with this. I've never tried this before. I'm going to,
Oh,
here we go. Monster
hey, that's
Therapist
cool.
and, and the Warlock Citadel. I love the cover.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I liked it too. There's a company called Demonza out there.
Hmm.
That's who did the cover, and they're really great to work with. They also did my Bard Tidings cover,
I kind of thought
and
it had a similar feel, but
yeah, yeah, they're really good. You basically just say this is kind of my vision for what's going to be on the cover. Here's some
hmm
other book covers in my category that I really like that I would like you to make something similar.
hmm
And both times with this Monster Therapist book and Bard Tidings, they just nailed it. And it was just like they blow me away by like how good they are. And
yeah.
so yeah, they've definitely got me hooked.
So I wasn't going to ask this, but what kind of things were your, you said here's some other similar titles that you'd like to. Can you remember off the top of your head?
It was more not necessarily of the stories, but the covers
Hmm.
themselves. You know what? I think I actually have them. Um, I had I had a book. I found a book that they also did. It was called Sir Hereward and Mr. Fitz. It's by Garth Nix. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
I have a friend of mine who I know will be watching this has been trying to get me to read Garth Nix for a few
Oh,
years now. I literally have been staring at a book that he forced into my hands for a year. Uh,
well,
right
yeah.
there,
Well,
right there. Okay.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. This one that I found is just I loved the way they did it, and I think it's a collection of his short stories, fantasy stories,
hmm
and the cover is just quirky and fun. I wish I could put it on the screen like you do, but anyways, that was one of them, and also like Mark of the Fool by J.M. Clark. Um, I just thought that one had a real. It had a fantasy vibe, but there was something a little kind of playful about it. Um,
Okay.
so I thought like he really struck the right chord. And the last one I'll say is one by called "I'm Afraid You've Got Dragons" by Peter S. Beagle.
Yeah.
Um, and just the title alone was so much fun. I was like, oh, okay, I got to read that. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
So I haven't finished it, but I started reading that one, and that one has a real
Finish
fun
it because
title.
you're going to be surprised at the way it goes.
Okay, cool.
That's all
Okay,
I'm going
good.
to say. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I was just from Bard Tidings, I was inclined to grab whatever you did next. And then I saw that
Oh,
cover. I didn't read anything about the book. I'm like, okay, this one's going. I got to get this one. So, what's the pitch? I mean, I've skimmed the pitch since then, but it was the cover, and I'm like, yeah, I have to.
yeah. So Monster Therapist, it really came about as just the spark of an idea of like, hey, I imagine the scene in my head. What if there was a warrior that kind of left his life as a swordsman, quester, and just said, like, you know what, I need a change of pace. I've seen too many things out there in the battlefield. I want something different. And he decided to become a therapist, but basically the only clients he's getting are like ogres and gargoyles and like these weird fantasy creatures. So I thought like it's funny because like his friend in the beginning, he just kind of as a nickname, he's like, hey, basically you're just like a monster therapist. So that's where the title came from. And the idea I just thought was um, a fun element to include in a fantasy story, because as he goes on his quest with his friends, he discovers like he's not only giving therapy to like literal monsters, but kind of the monster within us, that
Hmm.
comes up from time to time. And so he's ends up counseling his friends along the way. And I thought like, yeah, warriors that have seen like all these crazy battles, they would have a lot of things that they need therapy to discuss.
Sure.
So like, there should be a therapist for all these fantasy characters. So,
Definitely.
and again, it's lighthearted. It's not like nothing too serious. It's just a lighthearted, funny adventure. But I introduced kind of like that element of giving therapy to the members of his party along the way during the quest, and even using it at the end is kind of like a tool for battle. So I just thought it was a real fun element to include in a fantasy story.
Sure.
And it worked out really well because, when you're giving therapy, sometimes it invites blowback from people that say like, "Hey, you told my girlfriend to break up with me. How dare you?
Oh,
I'm going to get you." So in the first couple chapters, you see sort of an angry an angry ex that he
oh,
has
oh,
counseled one of his clients to break up with. So and that comes with the territory. I have a friend who's a therapist, and he goes, that's not that far from the truth. Stuff like that happens pretty regularly.
I
And I'm
bet.
like, okay.
Yeah.
So
Is this the same world as Bard Tidings,
it
or
is. It is.
okay?
It is. Yeah, yeah. I thought it would be fun to place them all within that same land of Ashralon, I call it. And there's even a point where they kind of mention like, "Hey, I heard a story of this bard that fought this dragon." So little callbacks. I was thinking how fun it would be maybe in the future to kind of have the characters from different books cross paths, but
Sure.
we'll see. We'll see. I haven't written that yet, but it's a fun idea in the back of my mind.
Okay. All right. I noticed that at least all your proceeds from books ordered from your website. Want to give you a chance to plug Orphan Outreach.
Yes, orphan outreach. I do. I kind of total up my revenue for all my books, and at the end of the year, I give 10% to a charity that's real close to my heart. It's called Orphan Outreach, and it's an organization that helps a lot of overseas orphanages with kids that really just have nowhere else to go. And I've been following them for a number of years, and I have links if you want to on my website. There's links if you want to read more about them. But I thought from when I first started writing, like, hey, wouldn't it be great if I always had sort of this charity on the side that I gave a small portion of my proceeds to? Not that I'm making a ton of proceeds,
Yeah.
but what I do bring in, I like to kind of have that as sort of I guess a type of tithe, or for lack of a better word,
Sure.
but yeah, it's kind of like part of my I guess ministry or mission in writing, to do that. So yeah, it's always been close to my heart, and I love that I get to continually give to the charity.
Absolutely. And viewers, all three of you, you heard the man. He doesn't make a lot of money. Don't make him send a bill for 10% of his losses to Orphan Outreach. Help him at the end of the year. Give some money away. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, I guess I really didn't have any other notes. The book Monster Therapist came out a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, February 28th. So yeah,
Okay,
just
couple of weeks.
a couple weeks ago. Yeah, it's still pretty new out there.
Getting any decent feedback? Any feedback?
Yeah, the feedback I've gotten has been, I feel like, the strongest of almost any book I've read. Like, it's not hitting bestseller lists or anything like that, but
Sure.
just like the feedback from readers,
Mm-hmm.
it just seems like it hit them where they wanted it to hit them, kind of like it really
All right.
resonated, and that's always like super satisfying. And yeah, so I mean, again, it's been a good couple weeks. Nothing to complain about, but yeah, the feedback I think has been really positive so far, and that's always encouraging, and kind of
Excellent.
makes me
Yeah.
want to make it into a series. I've written a couple chapters of a sequel, a potential sequel, but we'll see how it goes. We'll see.
Sure.
That's kind of the direction I would like it to go in, but kind of depends if a new idea pops into my head that takes over. So we'll see.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Um, and you're self-pub, right? So it's not like you've got an editor somewhere saying we need another one of these.
No, I
Whatever.
started out traditionally published. My
Mhm.
first series was called Space Drifters, and it was with Enclave Publishing, and that was really great because I didn't really know much about the publishing world, and it was just sort of awesome to work with a publisher
Sure.
for those first 3 books, and I learned a ton. And then I had a supernatural series that I wanted to do after that, and I pitched it to my publisher, and they're like, "Oh, I thought you were going to pitch another science fiction book to us," and I'm like, "Sorry, this is the idea that was in my head." And they're like, "Well, we're not really interested in going the supernatural direction right now." I'm like, "Okay, I guess I can just indie publish this." And I've been indie publishing ever since because I realized the freedom I have and the
Right.
speed. Like, you submit a book to a traditional publisher, you're waiting like a year and a half, maybe 2 years till that thing sees the light of day. When I finish a book indie publishing, as soon as my editor's done with it, boom, it's up on Amazon. And
Mm-hmm.
I like that. I mean, it's like, because then I can write something else, and
Yeah.
and also the ability to market and run advertising, since I'm making a much bigger royalty share. It's a lot smaller when you're with traditional, but when you go indie,
Sure.
especially if you go exclusive with Amazon, and I know some people are all anti-Amazon lately, but I get a lot of my I make a lot of my proceeds through the Kindle Unlimited program,
Mm-hmm.
and you kind of have to be exclusive to Amazon to get that. But there's a lot of Kindle Unlimited readers that will bring you money through page reads, which is really exciting because it's like another way you're earning money with the same
Sure.
story.
Yeah.
So yeah, but just the ability to run ads and instantly see, oh, here's how much I spent on ads, here's the profit I made. You can't really do that with traditional. It's kind of like you'll get a
Sure.
quarterly report and they may run some promotions, but you don't get to see those numbers. So it's hard to really plot out kind of an advertising budget or anything like that, especially
Mm-hmm.
when you're not seeing like, oh, how's this doing? I don't know. I mean, you could
Right.
contact them, and if they're really nice, they'll respond and give you details, but maybe not. It depends on the publisher. But this way, it's like I can see daily results and daily responses, and I can tweak and adjust. And there's just, you can be so nimble with indie
Yeah.
publishing, and again, a much bigger royalty share. So I personally have really enjoyed the indie publishing route, and I will
Yeah.
probably continue to do so unless some big fat contract lands in my lap, and then who knows. But
Sure.
so far I like it.
But particularly because you can be so nimble, you can write what you're in the mood to write,
Mm-hmm.
what connects with you, and not what you've promised someone.
Yes, and yeah, you're on your own deadlines. You're not on someone else's deadline, and you get to work with who you want to work with. I mean, let's say a traditional publisher connects you with an editor who you don't really jive with.
Sure.
Well, too bad.
Yeah.
You kind of got to work with that. But this way, indie, when you find editors that you really enjoy working with and they really get your style, you can keep working with them.
Oh yeah.
And you can find the cover artist, just like I found Damonza, and I'm like, dude, I'm going with you guys. You guys are awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just that kind of flexibility is really great, especially if you have a specific vision in mind for what you want to do. No one's going to change it. They'll make suggestions, and it's obviously good to stay humble and receive feedback and comments. I'm in critique groups. I listen to my editor. I'm not like headstrong, like my way or the highway. I'm always curious to get feedback. But in the end, you kind of do have to make that artist decision where it's like, you know what, I like this direction, and that's where I want to go.
Sure.
And yeah, it's nice to have that choice.
Okay. All right. So we're went a little bit longer than I've actually expected. One question, I didn't prep you for it, so you're in the hot seat now.
It's okay.
What you reading right now? What's got you excited? Give someone an idea.
You know what's funny? I'm actually lately, I can't point to a specific book because lately I've been getting really into Substack.
Oh.
I don't know if you do Substack at all, but I just started late last year, and there's a ton of writers on there. And the way they do it on Substack is you publish. I don't know if that's the right word. You post serialized fiction or episodic fiction, however you want to term it. and it's just like these real short chapters, but it just, and they almost usually people call them episodes instead of chapters.
Mm-hmm.
And they're short. They're kind of like real snappy, cliffhangery kind of episodes, and they're just such fun to read. So that's kind of what I've been reading lately. I've been just
Okay.
checking out all these different authors and seeing what they're doing, and it's been real fun. I started posting my own episodic fiction up there. It's another humorous
Mm-hmm.
fantasy one. It's called Almost the Chosen One.
Almost
And
the chosen one. All
yeah,
right.
yeah. So that's been a blast. And then you get people that subscribe, and so they get your latest episode in their email box. And it's a fun, different way to look at storytelling that I haven't experienced before. So
Mhm.
I've kind of been like really hooked on it lately. So yeah, that's
Sure.
what I've been reading.
Okay. Any authors in particular you'd say, hey, make sure you check these guys out?
Oh gosh, I'm trying to remember some of the names.
Told you, hot seat.
Yeah, right. I can think of them. I can think of like their profile, but their name is escaping me. Their names, because there's a few that I've really enjoyed reading lately. I will give a plug to an actual book that I've just started reading, which I thought was pretty fun. It's called The Unraveling of Emil. Oh, I'm going to mess up the title. The Unraveling of Emmeline Dulaine, I believe. Emmeline Dulaine. It's kind of a long title, but it's by an author called Lindsay Franklin. She is a part of Enclave Publishing's list of authors,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really fun. It's like not my typical genre. I think it's meant more for probably like a older teen or maybe young 20s, kind of a young adult female audience. But I like Lindsay's writing, and it's just kind of she's got a lot of nice style to her writing. And so I started reading that and thought like, oh, this is really fun. This is kind of unique. Again, I'm not super far into it, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I skip around a lot. I'm really bad with sticking with one book. I'm reading like 10 books at the same time, just like kind of whatever mood I'm in. So yeah, I'm all over the
Yeah.
place.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, there's The Unraveling of Emmeline Dulaine.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
If you think, by the way, of a couple of Substacks you want to be sure to plug, email me. I'll add it to the show notes.
Yeah.
And there we go. Otherwise, definitely be sure to check out Almost the Chosen One on Substack, as well as the rest of Paul's works. Thank you very much for your time, sir. I've enjoyed myself. I hope you haven't found this to be a giant waste of your time.
No, this is a blast. Thank you. We got to do
Good.
this again. I enjoy stuff like this. It's really
All right.
fun.
That would be great for sure. Folks, look below or look back on the post that you got to from this. There will be links to Paul's work and some of the other books that we've talked about. And otherwise, thanks a lot. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks.
And recording. And recording.